Imagine this scenario. Something arrives at the edge of our solar system that makes every astronomer in the world stop what they're doing and stare at their monitors in silence. A visitor from the deep unknown, catalogued as Comet 3I/Atlas in this hypothetical discovery, representing what could be the third confirmed interstellar object ever detected passing through our cosmic neighborhood. This thought experiment isn't about what actually happened, it's about what could happen, what might happen. The next time an interstellar visitor arrives, and more importantly, it's about us, about how we react when the universe offers us ambiguity instead of answers. And in this imagined scenario, for a few electric weeks, the internet exploded with speculation, whispers of alien probes, ancient spacecraft disguised as ice, and the kind of fevered hope that only comes when humanity glimpses something it cannot immediately explain. NASA said nothing, which only made it worse, because silence in science often means one of two things: either they know nothing, or they know something so strange that speaking too soon would be irresponsible. And in that vacuum, we filled the void with dreams. The object was moving fast, impossibly fast for something caught in the sun's gravity. And its trajectory was wrong, all wrong, coming in from a direction that suggested it had been wandering the galaxy for millions of years before stumbling into our little corner of existence. Telescopes around the world pivoted toward it, capturing light that had bounced off its surface just hours before, and what they saw was beautiful. A faint glowing tail, the hallmark of a comet shedding material as solar radiation boiled away its frozen exterior, and for a moment, it seemed so ordinary, so expected, just another dirty snowball wandering through the void. But then the data started coming in, and nothing about 3I/Atlas made sense anymore. The brightness was fluctuating wildly, not in the slow, predictable way comets usually behave, but erratically, spiking and dimming over hours, sometimes minutes, as if something inside it was turning on and off like a lighthouse in the dark. Astronomers measured the rate of its outgassing, the jets of vapor streaming off its surface, and the numbers were staggering. Plumes extending millions of kilometers into space, wider than the distance between Earth and the Moon, erupting with a violence that suggested this object was not gently melting but tearing itself apart. They calculated the mass loss, the amount of material it was shedding every second, and that's when the first whispers of doubt began to creep into the conversation, because the math didn't work. If 3I/Atlas was losing mass at the rate the instruments were detecting, it should have been gone already, evaporated into nothing long before it even reached the inner solar system. And yet there it was, still burning, still glowing, still defying every model we had. Some scientists proposed it was made of some exotic material, something with properties we hadn't encountered before, maybe a composition unique to its stellar nursery, forged in the death throes of a star we'll never see. And for a moment, that explanation held weight. Because if interstellar space could produce objects like Oumuamua, the smooth, elongated mystery that passed through in 2017, then why not something even stranger? The public latched onto this, hard, because we wanted it to be strange, we needed it to be, because the alternative, that it was just another comet, felt like a betrayal of the magic we'd projected onto it. Social media lit up with theories, some grounded in fringe physics, others veering into pure speculation, and the line between science and science fiction blurred until even professional astronomers found themselves second-guessing their own data. Imagine being one of those researchers, sitting in an observatory at 3 a.m, watching your instruments track an object that shouldn't exist according to everything you know, feeling that electric tension between wonder and doubt, knowing that whatever you publish next will either make your career or become a cautionary tale about rushing to conclusions. Then came the discovery that changed everything, or rather, the discovery that ended everything. A team in Chile, using high-resolution spectroscopy, isolated the chemical signature of the material streaming off 3I/Atlas, and what they found wasn't alien at all. It was water, carbon dioxide, ammonia, all the mundane ingredients of 1,000 other comets we've studied. Nothing exotic, nothing new. Just frozen boulders baked into rock and dust exactly like every other comet born in the Oort cloud or the Kuiper belt, or any of the vast reservoirs of debris left over from planetary formation. But if the composition was ordinary, then why was the behavior so extreme? The answer, when it finally emerged from the noise of conflicting data and rushed observations, was almost embarrassing in its simplicity. 3I/Atlas was breaking apart. Not catastrophically, not all at once, but slowly, fragmenting under the immense thermal stress of approaching the sun, its structure compromised by millions of years of exposure to cosmic rays and interstellar radiation. weakened to the point where even gentle heating was enough to crack it open like an eggshell. The wild brightness fluctuations weren't signs of alien technology or exotic physics. They were just the chaotic flaring of freshly exposed surface area, each new crack releasing a burst of trapped gas that caught the sunlight and blazed for a few hours before fading. The massive plumes weren't evidence of impossible energy sources. They were the death throes of an object that had survived the lonely cold of interstellar space only to shatter in the warmth of a star that wasn't even its own. And the mass loss problem, the equation that had seemed so impossible, dissolved when researchers realized they'd been measuring overlapping ejecta clouds, counting the same material twice, maybe 3 times, as fragments drifted apart and created the illusion of a single object losing more mass than it had. Picture it for a moment, debris fields spreading across millions of kilometers, each piece catching sunlight independently, each one registered by our instruments as a separate source of brightness, and our algorithms, designed to track single objects, were adding all those signals together and concluding that one comet was doing the work of 10. It wasn't a mystery, it was a mistake. A very human mistake born from the desperation to see something extraordinary in a dataset that was always just a little too noisy, a little too incomplete, a little too rushed because we were racing against time as the object sped past and disappeared forever into the dark. The disappointment was palpable. You could feel it in the scientific papers that followed, in the carefully neutral language that masked the deflation of hope, in the comment sections where people who never looked at a telescope before had convinced themselves they were witnessing first contact, only to learn they'd been watching ice melt. Press releases were quietly updated, Reddit threads went silent, YouTube videos with millions of views suddenly felt dated and foolish, and somewhere in that collective deflation was a lesson we keep refusing to learn. And maybe that's the real story here, not this fictional comet itself but what we would do with it, what we've already done with real objects like Oumuamua and Borisov, how quickly we turn ambiguous data into cosmic narratives. How quickly we turn ambiguous data into a cosmic narrative. How desperately we wanted the universe to surprise us with something that would justify our existence, our loneliness. Our stubborn insistence that we can't be the only ones looking up at the stars and wondering. Because 3I/Atlas did come from another star, that part was real. It traveled light years through the absolute emptiness between suns, drifting in silence for longer than our species has existed, carrying with it the chemical fingerprints of a solar system we will never visit, a star whose light reached us centuries ago, but whose planetary family remains forever invisible. Forever unknowable except for this one fragment of frozen debris that happened to pass close enough for us to see. And somewhere in that journey it should have meant something, it should have carried significance just by virtue of its origin, but instead it became a Rorschach test, a mirror reflecting our own hunger for meaning back at us. Scientists know this feeling. They're trained to resist it, to wait for the data, to let the universe reveal itself on its own terms. But the public doesn't wait, and the media doesn't wait, and in the gap between observation and understanding, we build myths. We've done it before. Oumuamua was supposed to be a light sail, Europa's plumes were supposed to be geysers hiding oceans full of life. Every unexplained radio signal from space gets labeled the WOW signal successor for a few breathless days before someone figures out it was interference from a satellite or a microwave oven in the lab, and we move on, chastened but not defeated. Because the next mystery is always just around the corner, and maybe this time it'll be the one that changes everything. But here's what we don't talk about enough, the cost of that cycle, the way it erodes trust in science itself, when every headline promises revolution and delivers retraction, when every mysterious object becomes clickbait before it becomes data. And while 3I/Atlas is a thought experiment, this pattern is real. We've seen it with Oumuamua in 2017, with Borisov in 2019. With every unusual signal or anomaly that captures public imagination, when the gap between what researchers actually said and what the internet heard becomes so wide that honest scientists stop talking to journalists altogether because they know their careful caveats will be stripped away in favor of a better story. 3I/Atlas became part of that problem, another entry in the long catalog of cosmic disappointments. Another reason for skeptics to roll their eyes when astronomers announce something unusual. Another example used by people who've decided that science is just guessing dressed up in equations. But 3I/Atlas won't change anything except maybe our humility, our willingness to admit that sometimes the universe is exactly as boring as it appears, that not every anomaly is an alien, not every comet is a messenger, not every flicker of light carries intention. The object is gone now, or what's left of it is gone, fragmented into pieces too small to track, scattered across a trajectory that will take it out of the solar system and back into the void. And no one will ever see it again, no telescope will ever catch its light. And in a few decades it'll be a footnote in a database, a catalog number without a story, stripped of all the magic we tried to give it. And maybe that's the most unsettling part, not that we were wrong, but that we were so eager to be right about something impossible that we ignored the simpler, sadder truth staring us in the face. Because if 3i/Atlas taught us anything, it's that the universe doesn't owe us wonder, it doesn't owe us mysteries designed to fit our narrative hunger, it just is, indifferent and vast and occasionally sending us frozen rocks that break apart under sunlight. And we're left here, on this tiny world, building telescopes and algorithms and careers out of the hope that one day, something out there will look back. Think about what that means for a moment, really sit with it. Every telescope ever built, every radio array scanning the sky, every probe we've sent into the dark, all of it motivated by this fundamental human need to not be alone, to find evidence that consciousness exists somewhere else, that intelligence emerged on another world and looked up at its sky the way we look up at ours. And what if the answer is just silence? What if every interstellar visitor is just debris? What if the universe is full of dead rocks and empty space and nothing that thinks, nothing that wonders, nothing that would even recognize us as kin if it passed us in the cosmic night? But nothing's looking back, or if it is, it's not looking at us, and 3i/Atlas was never going to be the exception. It was always just a comet, dying the way comets die, unspectacular and alone. And the only reason it felt like more was because we needed it to be. That need is human, maybe the most human thing about us. This refusal to accept the silence, this compulsion to see patterns and purpose and randomness, to turn every cosmic accident into a sign, every interstellar visitor into a revelation, and maybe we'll never stop doing that. Maybe that's what keeps us building bigger telescopes and launching probes into the dark. This irrational hope that the universe is hiding something worth finding. Something that will make the search feel justified. But 3i/Atlas isn't hiding anything, it never was, it's just debris, ancient and cold and utterly indifferent to the meaning we tried to impose on it, and now it's gone. And we're still here, still searching, still hoping, still projecting our loneliness onto every distant light that moves against the stars. The scientists who tracked it have moved on to other projects, the telescopes have turned toward new targets, and somewhere in a server farm, the data sits archived. Ones and zeros representing the brief moment when an object from another star passed through our system and we convinced ourselves it meant something it didn't. Maybe the real mystery isn't in the stars, maybe it never was, maybe it's in us, in this strange relentless need to find something out there that makes sense of everything in here, in why we can't stop searching for something that isn't there, in why the truth, when we finally find it, always feels like less than we deserved, and yet we keep looking anyway, because what else is there to do, what else could we possibly do? Except point our instruments at the sky and wait for the next visitor. The next anomaly, the next chance to be wrong in a way that feels, for just a moment, like being right, knowing full well that we'll probably be disappointed again, that the universe will probably remain as silent and indifferent as it's always been, but searching anyway, hoping anyway, because the alternative, accepting that we're alone, that these frozen visitors are just reminders of how rare and fragile and temporary everything we are might be, is somehow more terrifying than any alien we could ever imagine.